It's so much easier to give up. If I had known how difficult this journey was going to be, I probably would have never started. Thankfully, I was a naive child who didn't understand the complexity of the world. At that time, all I could see were the words in my head that I needed to write down, and not everything that would come after placing the final period in my story. 8 years later, I never thought I would be here. I never thought my story would turn out this way, but I'm glad it did. My name is Aisha Yusuf. I'm the author of Race to the Finish Line and the co-founder of Abaya House Publishing.
Determined to make local literature more diverse, an Edmonton author wrote a novel featuring a young Black Muslim woman. But after several rejections by publishing houses, she and her sisters decided they weren't about to let that story go untold.
So far, 200 copies of Aisha's book have sold, with some making it across the globe.
Look what made it to Esland.
Now, the doors of Abaya House are open to all.
I come from a family of writers and storytellers. I come from an oral tradition in Somali. It's all about poetry and storytelling. It's something that's very ingrained in my culture. Our dad would always bring us books. He would take random articles that he would find in the day and post on the fridge. And be like, you better read this by the time I get home. And then we'd have discussions about it. So that's kind of how we were raised. I remember just complaining to my family and saying, like, how come I never get to see myself? How come people who look like me, Black and Muslim, are always represented in either two ways? Either the terrorist or the girl that hates her religion, who hates her culture, takes off her hijab and runs away with a white boy. So one day I came across Toni Morrison's quote that said, if there's a book that you want to read, but it hasn't been written yet, then you must be the one to write it. So that's how I started my writing journey, and I haven't stopped since. So when I finished my book, I had envisioned that I was going to publish with the Big Five. So the Big Five publishing companies in North America. And that was what I saw. I'm like, I'm going to walk into a bookstore. I'm going to see my books there. I had all these imagination, and I was so excited. So when I did start that process of going into publishing my book traditionally, and I started doing the research, I started seeing all of this like own voices and representation, and we want your book. If you're from this demographic, please send us your book. We want to bring more diversity into the literature industry. And I was so excited because I'm like, wow, finally we're becoming more diverse, we're expecting more stories. And I specifically went after like agents that would really champion my voice, as they had stated in their submission requirements, like, we want your voice. So that was very important for me to find somebody that actually stated that, you know, I want somebody like you. And I'm like, this is great, this is, wow, this is all I would have wanted. Own voice and all this, and I'm like, this is just, look how far we've come. I'm very excited. So I started creating my book and sending my books to agents. You know, it's a very nerve-wracking process. The waiting period is just excruciating. But so I started getting responses back within a week, 2 weeks, I think a month. All the responses started pouring in. I got rejected, by the way, from all of them. And it was sad. The first rejection was the hardest. And the second rejection would come. And afterwards, you just get used to it and you're like, oh, okay. But when I started reading the rejections, and actually start thinking critically about it and just not taking it to heart and be like, Aisha, like, take a step back and see what this is saying. And I started getting personalized rejections, which is something that is kind of rare. Usually you get ignored, you get left on red, or they send you an automated rejection. But these agents actually took the time to respond to me personally, and that was something that I appreciated because it gave me a huge insight into something that started my journey with Abaya House. And that insight was, they weren't ready for the book. Truthfully speaking, that's just kind of how it was. I knew that my book was very daring. I mean, just look at the cover. The cover, I feel like, tells the entire story. Like, it's a character that's just, she's strong, she's courageous. She's very, very different in terms of what you would see in mainstream media, you know? She's not the typical Muslim character that you see every day. I started this book in high school, and for me in high school, like, you know, there weren't any pushbacks, but definitely when I got into university and I entered my program, specifically that time of actually getting ready to publish the book, I just saw things getting harder for me, and I saw that, first of all, it was very hard to balance two extremely difficult things, like trying to publish a book and being a university student. This specific experience, I took a book publishing class. It was all about book publishing. I was in the middle of publishing my book, and I came to my professor. She's like, why'd you come to this class? And I said, oh, I'm trying to publish a book, I'm in this project. And then she was like, come see me after class. I'm like, wow, okay, she might want to help me. This might be a good experience. So I went to her after class, and she's like, tell me more. And I said, I'm gonna actually publish this book by myself. And I told her all my plans of being a Black Muslim woman in the literature industry. And then she looked at me dead in the eyes and said, you might want to rethink that. Those were experiences that I was having, and it kept getting worse as the time went on. And it's specifically now, it's this semester, trying to publish my book, being on the news, alhamdulillah, all these things happening in terms of finally publishing my book. I noticed that it became extremely hard. And I was only taking 4 classes this semester. I was taking 5, and I got a great mark. But this semester, if I needed something from my professors, ignored. I would ask for small things, reasonable things. However, my requests would get denied. I would talk to my program and be like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Can you make it easy for me? Pretend like I didn't even exist, nor I was doing anything. But students would tell me, oh, the professors are talking about you. I'm like, but they're not saying anything to me. And so I noticed a specific professor that I would have done good in his class, but this class I was getting 30s, 40%, so marks that I've never gotten in my life. 30% for going under the word limit, 40% for going over the word limit. You didn't use enough sources. I'm like, what can I possibly do to get the marks that I needed? And there was nothing that I could do. I could actually see that this was a pattern, and we came so close to the semester that these were the roadblocks that I kept seeing. There was a breaking point that happened, and leading up to that, there were moments where something would happen, I would break down and be like, look, this is what's happening, and I have to endure it. I have to endure it, and I have to endure it. And every day I would look at the calendar, I'm almost done, I'm almost done, I'm almost done. But they kept happening. Every week something would happen with my school, every week, and it just kept getting worse. And then one night, it was a great night, I wanted to go to sleep, and I saw an email, and that just was the breaking point. I'm like, there's no way that I'm getting ready to release my book. All these opportunities are happening for me. I'm a student of this program, but the way that I'm being treated is so unacceptable that I cannot do it any longer. And actually, at that point, it was, I'm not gonna put too much value on this. I'm gonna value myself first. I think that's what the breaking point was. I'm like, why am I being degraded for this? For what reason? And I had to really evaluate, was this more valuable than me? And it really wasn't. And I had to make that choice. And I'm like, I'm not gonna sacrifice my mental health, my business, or anything for this paper. And I was so close to the finishing end, but sadly 3 weeks before I finished, I had to walk away. I'm in a place in my life right now where my book is out, I have a publishing company, and I'm successful, and I'm happy, and it's something that I have been working for the past 8 years of my life. And it's finally come true. And for me, there's nothing sad about that. Everything that I've been through, all the setbacks, all the obstacles, prepared me for where I am right now. It's allowed me to grow, it's allowed me to see the world in a different way, and it's really allowed me to appreciate everything that I have, because it's easy to take things for granted. And those obstacles, first of all, not showed me how to work hard, but it showed me to never give up on myself and to never give up on my dreams. And they are valuable lessons that will stay with me for the rest of my life. Those obstacles were not obstacles, but learning curves. Every time an obstacle came in my way, I had to view it as, what am I learning from this now? What is it teaching me? And how can I apply this to my future? Because I believed in myself, and I believed in my dreams, I was able to get to where I am today. And I wasn't going to let anybody take that belief away from me. Not now, and not ever. And that's a lesson that I have learned walking away from my school. And it's a lesson that I learned walking away from the traditional publishing industry. Because I walked away from those spaces, I can run towards a Abaya house, a place where my voice can live freely, a place where I can speak my truth, and a place where I feel safe. And that's all I've ever wanted. And I'm so grateful to have a Abaya house, and I'm honored to be a part of it. And I'm honored to hopefully one day extend that space to people who need it.